So, since favouring the Fujifilm X-E1 over the X100 that I compared them against a couple months ago now, I've since got rid of the X100 and kept the X-E1. So I set about the task of comparing the X-E1 against the more difficult task of my kind of established mirrorless system, the Olympus Micro Four Thirds camera system. And this is the original EM1 Mk1 released back in 2012. So the X-E1 actually and the EM1 are both released kind of the same sort of time. I think the Olympus EM1 just edges it by about 12 months. So as I've been using my Olympus EM1 now for quite a long time, and the kind of the mirrorless Micro Four Thirds system in general, I've obviously kind of built up quite a collection of lenses. Like I've got the 12 to 40, I've got a macro, I've got a kind of a telephoto, a 50 to 200mm lens, I've got a nice kind of 20mm 1.7 prime. So it's fair to say that I'm more established in the kind of the Olympus system. So the task of comparing this system with the kind of the new kid on the block was obviously going to be a little bit more difficult than just comparing two new cameras I had in my possession. Yeah, so invariably I felt a lot more kind of protective against my kind of Olympus system when I started the difficult task of comparing it with the X-E1. So it's probably fair to say, like it was when I was looking at the X100 with this camera, the X-E1 was on the back foot because I wanted it to kind of fail. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this comparison between these two cameras is going to be a little bit more difficult than my previous comparisons, and as such I'm probably going to end up doing quite a few videos on this particular subject because it's a big decision to make in terms of whether the Fuji is going to be that much better than my Olympus in terms of getting the kind of the images that I want it to kind of capture. So with this video, I've just decided, like for the last few months, I've been taking both cameras out to kind of different locations, different kind of subjects, and I thought I'd just let the images kind of do most of the talking in this video, and then again that gives me a good kind of basis to kind of discuss around some of the aspects which in terms of what camera did a better job in some situations, and then moving forward that will kind of help me decide what I actually want out of a camera these days in terms of how they render images, the kind of the tonality, and just those aspects really to help me kind of try and make a decision on whether I want to keep both cameras or whether I want to switch to Fuji or obviously stay with my kind of current Olympus system. So obviously there's some caveats and some difficulties I face when I started comparing these two cameras, because I've built up quite a large lens collection already for my Olympus system, and includes this lens here, which is the 12 to 40 Pro lens, which is equivalent to 24 to 80 on a full frame kind of camera. And because this sits in the Pro range of Olympus lenses, because it has a constant aperture of f2.8, which makes it a great all-rounder kind of lens. So obviously with the Fujifilm, I haven't yet built up that same kind of lens collection, and because I'm still at the stage where I'm still kind of just looking to see whether this camera is going to be better than my Olympus system or whether it's going to complement it, I haven't yet bought the kind of the similar lenses that I have done already with my Olympus system. And to that end, I'm still kind of struggling through with this 15 to 45 kit lens on the Fuji, which while I have been pretty impressed with, it's a little bit of a pig to use because it's got a kind of a power zoom, which if I just turn it on a minute, you have to kind of just turn the dial to kind of get the focal length that you think that you want for the scene. And of course the difficulty with this is there's no markings on the lens whatsoever, so it doesn't help you tell you what your focal length is. And again, on this back of the screen, it doesn't tell you what focal length you are as well. So again, like I've found with other comparisons, it's really difficult with this lens to kind of match the scene and the compositions when I'm doing these kind of comparison videos. Whereas if you compare that to my Olympus system, it's got the kind of the focal length on the lens, so you can easily say, right, I'm going to shoot this at 25mm, and there you go. And then also you've got a corresponding, when you fire up the camera, it does tell you as well what focal length you're at, so it kind of really helps you kind of select in the focal length that you kind of want to use. So another thing that made these upcoming comparisons a little bit difficult as well is the Olympus system uses a 4:3 kind of image ratio, whereas on the Fujifilm cameras they use a 3:2. So obviously that made things difficult when trying to match kind of compositions. So with all those kind of caveats out of the way, I did try really hard obviously to match the kind of the compositions that I took with both of these cameras. So again, I tried to match the focal length, trying to match the apertures where possible, the light, you know, if the sun came out in one photo, I tried to kind of take the other image with the same kind of light conditions as well, just to try and make it as fair as I could, considering the differences that I've kind of highlighted already. Yeah, so I shot an aperture priority with both cameras, and then I let the kind of the camera decide what kind of ISO it needed to meter the scene correctly, and they're both using kind of auto metering as well, so I didn't kind of delve into changing any specific settings with respect to those aspects. So another thing to note as well is both of these cameras are a crop sensor. The Fuji's got a slightly larger aps-c crop sensor, whereas on the Olympus it's a micro four thirds sensor, which is smaller again. Right, so with all that out of the way, I thought, like I said earlier, I was just going to do what I did in previous videos. I was just going to put up a load of kind of comparison images between the two cameras, so you can kind of see how each camera handles kind of each scene and particular subjects. And then when that's done, I'll just offer up some quick initial kind of conclusions that I've kind of drawn so far while using these two cameras side by side. So let's roll the images. Right, so I hope you enjoyed that little kind of run through. I'll just talk through some of my initial kind of conclusions from using these cameras side by side over the last couple of months. And it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but I did notice, certainly with the Olympus, is that, and again, I don't know whether this is probably differences because of the different kind of crop sensors, so the way that they kind of capture an image is going to be slightly different. But I definitely did find that the Olympus tended to kind of keep more of the kind of the scene in focus, whereas the Fuji was very quick to kind of drop that focus away when you didn't need it, you know. So obviously I wanted to get the subject in focus, but then in front of that, beyond that, with the Fuji, it kind of tended to move those areas out of focus a lot more quickly than the Olympus EM1. And I'm not saying at the moment I prefer one look to the other, but it's something certainly to be mindful and keeping in mind that that's what the kind of the camera tends to do when out shooting with it, in terms of what you want to keep in and out of focus. So already I can definitely start to see some of the advantage of the Fuji kind of system. And I felt this way when I compared it with the Fujifilm X100. And I feel that there's certainly a way that the X-E1 kind of captures images. To me, they have a little bit more of a kind of a pop, more kind of organic feeling to them over the kind of the Olympus files, and which is quite amazing considering that this is a real cheap kind of 15 to 45 kit lens, whereas obviously my Olympus is a pro lens. Yeah, so I'm not entirely convinced at the moment that I like the way that the Fuji renders kind of greens compared to kind of the Olympus, and on occasion I have kind of changed that by kind of shifting the white balance on the Fuji camera. But the problem I have is that it doesn't necessarily need to be applied to every scene. Yeah, so I'm still kind of deciding whether I like the greens or not at this stage. It's just, I think it's not necessarily bad or garish or whatever. It's just different to what I'm used to with the kind of the Olympus colours, because I generally found that the Olympus colours, and you'll probably see it as well in those images, the Olympus tends to favour more kind of warmer kind of shades, whereas the Fuji potentially offers a little bit more kind of natural and cooler kind of shades. And again, I'm not saying I prefer at the moment one or the other, it's just kind of differences in the way that Fuji and Olympus kind of render a scene. And I'm talking here as well, this is in their kind of their JPEGs. So in all the images you've just seen, they were straight out the camera JPEGs, no cropping, nothing, you know. So it's just, so I just wanted to give a fair comparison. I've always really struggled, I think, with my Olympus system to get the colours how I wanted them, which is probably why I'm here now looking at kind of Fuji, who are kind of renowned for their kind of Fuji colours. So yeah, so it's definitely just a different kind of look, and it depends on what kind of look that you like really, and I'm still kind of undecided in that regards. One final thing for me at this juncture is that the Fuji does a much better job at kind of pulling all information it can out of kind of highlights, I find, in that sometimes with the Olympus it kind of tends to blow out the highlights, or you lose a lot of kind of detail and colour in the skies, where the Fuji, I find, is amazing in kind of retaining all that kind of information. Yeah, I'm just so impressed with the way that the Fuji does that, and it also again manages to kind of really retain a lot of information and detail in the kind of the darker and the shadow areas of an image as well, compared to probably the Olympus system. So the decision on what to do is not quite as easy as it probably was in other comparisons that I've done. So obviously with the X100 to the X-E1, the X-E1 I felt was a lot better, so I kept it. Again with the Canon 5D that I've bought and now sold, I felt that the X-E1 again did a much better job, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult here when comparing it to my Olympus EM1 system, because there's no denying at this point that the little Fuji X-E1 can't hold its own against the kind of the Olympus system. And I wonder what the difference would be if I actually put some better glass on this little camera and then compare that with potentially my kind of prime lenses on the Olympus EM1. Do you think it's time to kind of invest in a better kind of lens so I can probably level the playing field a little bit when I'm kind of looking at more comparisons and aspects between these two kind of systems. Yeah, so I'm definitely going to be doing some more comparisons with these two cameras over the next few months, because like I said earlier, it's a little bit more difficult at the moment because I'm a lot more embedded into the Olympus kind of ecosystem at the moment than I am with the Fuji. So it's going to take a little bit more time to see where this Fuji fits into my kind of gear, whether it's kind of going to take over as the main camera or whether it's kind of just going to complement the Olympus system in certain kind of situations and environments. Because I think it's important to note here is that the X-E1 and probably the lenses that I buy for the Fuji are not going to be weather resistant, they're not going to be dust proof, whereas a lot of my lenses for this system are weather protected in that I don't have to worry about taking them out in inclement weather as much as the X-E1. So that's certainly going to be a big kind of consideration moving forward. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little run through. If you've got any kind of comments or questions, feel free to put them in the box below and I will answer them, as I tend to do all the comments and questions that I receive on this channel. So, thanks for watching. Bye for now.